Welcome to Keep What You Earn, your judgment and jargon-free zone for entrepreneurs of all levels. Get ready to learn how to scale your business, save money and taxes, and create a business that grows your wealth. If it feels like the financial side of business is like eating your vegetables, well, then think of this podcast as the ranch dressing to make the process a little more enjoyable. My name is Shannon. I'm a CPA and business owner on a mission to simplify money and empower others through knowledge. I hope this episode inspires you to take action, but remember that the information we share is for educational purposes only and is not individual tax advice. Now that we got that out of the way, let's start the show. I often recommend to business owners that they start looking at goal setting in Q4 for the next year, and honestly in September and October, because I find every single year that, especially in our business, year end is super, super busy, also with holidays and distractions and things going on. The best time, I think, when you're thinking clearly is in the fall to really start planning and to start thinking about goals for Q4 and the next year. And it also takes a lot of pressure off of the year end, because imagine if you have to do all of your goal setting right around the holidays, right around New Year's, and then we dump all this stuff out there. We'll just do it in January. And next thing you know, you're behind on your goal setting and it's February and you already feel like you've missed the boat. I've been there. A lot of my clients have been there. And we really encourage people to start tracking that back into the fall so that you're getting ahead of the curve and also thinking a bit more clearly and not just setting goals for the sake of getting it done. So with that, we went through a pretty big revamp of the way we do our goals at Keep What You Earn and revisited everything because a lot of the team has changed, a lot of our goals have changed, and we just decided to hit a reset button because what we were doing was not working. And I'm going to tell you what we did and what huge mistake we made and how we corrected for it. Now, I'm in the process of proving that correction was worthwhile and that we're not going to pivot that again. But I can tell you that we made a huge improvement in the past couple of weeks. Credit to those who are editing this episode and my team in operations for contributing to that conversation, because I really do think it got super clear. And I'll tell you how we did it step by step in this episode. So, the number one mistake we made while we were setting our goals early on in the year was I went all in on establishing goals that were measurable. So I wanted to come up with a way to score keep, a way to figure out if we were winning or not. Obviously, I'm a numbers person. So as a numbers person, what I wanted to do was add quantitative figures, quantitative measurements to everything, even if the metric or the goal really didn't lend itself to that. So, one of our goals was, for example, process innovation and correcting for process breakdowns. And one of the metrics we had was like the number of processes automated that month. And in reality, Courtney, who manages a lot of our operations, she really just makes that's her whole job. Like, she makes that her lifestyle is automating operations and improving operations. That's basically her whole job description. So if she has to inventory how many processes she's working on, that is not worth the effort. And also, if we're meeting that goal, what happens? If we're not meeting that goal, what happens? What we failed to do was to articulate what happens when we meet this goal and also what milestone are we shooting for? Because really, two big things came out of this conversation that we had done wrong. One was over measuring everything down to quantifying the things that shouldn't be quantified. And then the other thing was that we were using monthly goals, like monthly activity. So for example, email list growth or the number of sales calls, et cetera. But we had never really celebrated hitting a milestone. So and chasing a finish line. So for example, for the podcast, we look at the monthly downloads, but what we didn't realize is that we were pretty close to 500,000 downloads. And that's pretty cool. And I think that we lost sight of the overall accomplishment because we were focused so much on the micro metric of what we're doing every single month and not celebrating those wins. So actually, Courtney brought this up to me and the team brought this up to me, and I was already kind of feeling like the goals weren't really jiving with everybody, that they weren't really marching toward that and didn't understand the purpose of it. And they're just nodding their heads and agreeing with me because my company, and I'm just telling them this is the goals I want to set. nobody was disagreeing, but I do feel like everybody was uncomfortable with these because they didn't know how to show they were accomplishing them and they really weren't connected to them. So, what we did instead was we stripped back to our mission statement. We stripped back to really three pillars: acquisition, fulfillment, and operations. You've heard me talk about these before in the context of financials. Well, I took that concept and I've brought that three pillar approach into goal setting. And what we did was we took those three areas and said, what would we like to accomplish in these three areas by the end of the year? And we got really specific because there's a lot we want to do. There's a lot of dreaming happening in the room, which I love. But I said, okay, we have 4 months, you know, what can we reasonably accomplish? And we narrowed it down to 1 to 2 goals per one of those areas, and or 2 to 3. So we ended up with about, I want to say, 10 total goals in terms of what we wanted to do. But the cool thing is that in developing these goals, instead of coming up with measurable metrics or quantitative numbers, what we instead did was we looked for indicators that the goal was happening or wasn't happening. So here's an example. One of our goals in the product area is that we have a basically 100% responsiveness rate. And by that, I mean, it's not like a measurable thing, which by the way, like the tendencies to want to make everything measurable 100% comes from my background working at McDonald's. Because we had that 2-minute timer, we had all the different temperatures and all the different cook times. And like I was a numbers nerd over that stuff. So stripping that away was difficult. But what we ended up doing was we took product and we said, okay, CFO services, we want to be known for being responsive. That's a really big goal of ours that like we all believe in, that we want to be responsive, but not desperate, if you will. So we wanted to make sure that we were respectfully responsive. And what we did was we said, okay, it's kind of like a restaurant when you have the person who comes around and fills your water glass. If you have to ask for another drink or if you have to say, "Hey, can I please have some more water?" That is kind of annoying. You may not notice how annoying it is, but I will tell you it does go a long way when you never have to ask. You start noticing that, right? So we've always said never let the water glass go empty. So if a client is following up with us, if a client is following up with us and they're saying, "Hey, what happened to that thing?" or "Weren't you going to do this thing?" or "Hey, I sent you an email or I sent you a Slack, you never responded." We said that is the indicator that we are not doing the goal. We are not meeting the goal. One of those things happens, we are not meeting the goal. We got to figure out, where did the breakdown happen? Where did we not see that? What can we do to prevent that happening again? So what we've instead done is we said the goal is 100% respectful responsiveness. And what we did to quote unquote measure that was basically a zero client follow up. Like there was never any turnaround back to us saying, "Hey, where's that thing that you promised me?" Like a 100% reliability score for us. And as soon as one thing happens, we don't have that 100% reliability score for that responsiveness. So it may sound draconian, but it's not, I promise you, because what we do instead is say, everybody now has radar. That when that happens, we've all agreed this is the goal. So, and it's only one of 8 to 10 goals. So it's easy to remember that when the client circles back and follows up on this, we all kind of go, that's the thing we talked about. Okay, we got to figure out how to fix that. And everybody recognizes that's a hole in the pipeline versus just you as the owner, versus just you as the manager, the CEO, having that radar that nobody else has. But I swear, if you give people the sort of playbook that is your brain on what ticks you off or what goes against your goals, and you start making it's our goals, and this is what is an indicator it's working or isn't working. I'm telling you, when everybody has that radar on, it's going to work because it's already started working. We already had an incident where somebody turned back a request and followed up, and I was like, ah, and we all kind of looked at each other like, oh, there's one of them. And now everybody's paying attention to that. So it's kind of more in the consciousness of the team. And now what we're going to be doing is working toward making sure that doesn't happen and making sure that everybody is on top of that. And I think that people will instill their own processes the way they work to make sure that doesn't happen. Hey, Shannon here, and I have a quick favor to ask. If you're enjoying this podcast and enjoying this episode, please leave us a review on your podcast platform, whether that's Apple, Spotify, Amazon, any of them, and let us know if you're enjoying the show. One of your biggest takeaways, we would really, really appreciate it. Okay, back to the show. So there is a way you can fit this into any goal that you have, any goal that you have. So if we're looking for, really good podcast guests, or we're looking for, you know, lead generation type stuff, all of that really goes into the same type of process of figuring out, well, what's an indicator that we are not accomplishing that? Or what is an indicator that we are accomplishing that? And how can we now turn on the radar if that indicator is positive or negative? And how do then we discuss the corrective action steps? So we talked about how if we notice something, it's like a see something, say something. And if we notice something, then we have to get together and figure out, okay, how do we prevent that from happening? Or how do we get this back on the right track? And if every quarter, we're going to be doing this every quarter, we go through what's been working from the goals that we've set. So let's say it's 8 to 10 for the quarter. We go through, okay, has anyone seen any indicators that this is not happening? Let's talk about it. Do we all believe that this is 100% happening? Meaning, would you say, here's the question I'm going to ask my team is, would you say this doesn't need to be a goal for next quarter because we've just like mastered it? And if anybody's like, not really, I think we still need to work on it, then we got to talk about it. So it should be something where you've accomplished like that 100% reliability. It's like, okay, have we trained ourselves to behave in a way where we have made it a habit? We have made this behavior into a habit such that we don't have to name it anymore and measure ourselves against it. We are doing it. Like you don't have to count how many times you brush your teeth in a week. You know you do it twice a day or once a day or whatever. I do it twice a day. But if you know that you have that habit already, you don't need to keep score. And that's actually what we're trying to get to, is the point where we don't have to keep score anymore. And that's a really interesting thing. The other part of this that I wanted to share with you is to celebrate milestones, like I mentioned, because let's just say it's the podcast and it's that 500,000 views that we're about to hit. I would say, guys, like we should be keeping track of like what are the celebrations, anniversaries, birthdays within the business, not just literally for the team, which we already celebrate, but what are the ways that we can measure a true milestone accomplishment that we can be proud of? My 100th podcast appearance, I would celebrate my team's anniversaries, my company's, my podcast's 500,000 downloads would be awesome. So, what else can we celebrate as a team that we all contribute to? And maybe it's our millionth dollar of sales. Maybe it's our 25th client or 50th client or whatever it is. Find your own way to celebrate these little milestones that you can, and to just also acknowledge the team and recognize them for the work that they put into doing that. I think that it does go far when people can take a step back and just like look behind them and see how far they've come, and not just be chasing the next month's data or the next month's quotas, but actually take a step back and say, hey, we did a great job. We accomplished the thing we set out to do. Awesome. And then set the next goal, next milestone, but give yourself a target to hit so you guys know you've hit it. And that's a really important thing. I didn't realize how important that was until that was brought up to me in terms of goal setting. Was we don't really know where we're heading to. We have it's almost like having a goal to run a mile a day, but we don't realize we're running a marathon. Like, what is the finish line? How far are we running? And how do we know that we've made it? And that was a really eye-opening question for me. So I'm passing this on to you to say, as you're setting your goals for Q4 and for 2025, I want you to really think about how you can adapt these goals and identify the indicators that they are or are not moving in the right direction, along with the associated milestones that you can celebrate as a team. I think that will be huge if you can implement all of those steps. One of the fastest ways that digital business owners lose cash is not having a clean tech stack. And by that, I mean individual costs for email marketing platforms, CRM, community page, course creation platform, website designers, and all these things do add up. And it can be super hard to run a profitable business using all of these different systems. That's why I love Kajabi. Kajabi is your all-in-one solution that manages your business throughout the customer journey. From lead generation to taking payment and sending onboarding emails, we use Kajabi for everything. And you can try Kajabi for 14 days free by heading to trykajabifree.com or click the link below in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating and review on your podcast platform. This small action goes a long way for podcasters to get our message heard by more business owners just like you. Be sure to check out the show notes for links to information about our guests and ways to get in touch with me. We'll see you on the next episode.